Season 6, Episode 10, Taxes as Friction, Not Failure. Throughout this season, we've explored how different account structures shape the way investments interact with the tax system. We've looked at containers that maximize flexibility, containers that delay taxation, containers that settle taxes early, and containers that impose constraints in exchange for long-term advantages. Each of these structures changes how income becomes visible and when taxes are paid. But before we leave this season, it's helpful to step back and look at taxes from a wider perspective, because many investors quietly develop the same emotional response to taxes. They see them as a failure, a sign that something went wrong, something that should have been avoided. But that perspective often leads people down the wrong path. Taxes are not primarily a sign of failure. They are a sign of activity. Income was generated, assets were sold, capital was deployed. The portfolio interacted with the real world. And when that interaction occurs, the tax system takes its share. That's the design of the system. In fact, many of the most desirable financial outcomes naturally generate taxes. Dividends are taxed. Interest is taxed. Capital gains are taxed when they are realized. Businesses generate profits that are taxed. Rent is taxed. In other words, many of the things investors hope their portfolios will produce eventually become visible to the tax system, and that visibility triggers taxes. This doesn't mean taxes should be ignored. Thoughtful account structures can reduce unnecessary friction. Containers that delay taxation can allow compounding to run longer. Roth and HSA structures can create certainty. Matching income types to account types can improve efficiency. All of these ideas matter, but they exist within a broader reality. The goal is not to eliminate taxes entirely. The goal is to build a system that functions well despite them. Think again about the idea of friction. Every real-world system contains some form of resistance. Machines experience mechanical friction. Businesses experience operating costs. Investments experience volatility. And financial systems experience taxes. Trying to remove friction completely often leads to designs that are fragile or overly complex. But systems that accept a small amount of friction tend to be more durable, more stable, more adaptable. Taxes play a similar role in financial architecture. They are a cost, but they are also part of the environment. And once that perspective settles in, something interesting happens. The emotional intensity around taxes often fades. Instead of seeing them as something to defeat, they become something to design around. A well-designed financial system doesn't obsess over every tax outcome. It simply uses the available containers thoughtfully. Some capital remains flexible. Some capital compounds quietly for the long term. Some capital grows inside structures that provide certainty. The system balances visibility, timing, access, and flexibility. Taxes remain present, but they no longer dominate the design. And this brings us to the deeper lesson of this season. Accounts are containers. Taxes shape how the contents of those containers become visible. Access rules shape when the capital can move. Together, they form the structural environment in which investments operate. But the containers themselves are not the objective. They are simply tools. The real objective is something much simpler: to build a financial system that supports life, a system that allows capital to grow, a system that allows income to appear when it is needed, a system that remains understandable and adaptable across decades. When that system is functioning well, taxes will inevitably appear along the way. And that is not a failure, it is simply the cost of a system that is alive. In the next season, we'll move from containers and taxes into something more practical: implementation. Because even the best financial architecture eventually reaches a simple question: how does this system actually operate in daily life? How do all these pieces work together when money begins moving through them? That's where the architecture begins to become lived experience. And that's where we'll go next.